Hello and welcome to Shop Talk with Dan the Man. Today's video we're going to talk about woodworking. This is a jewelry box I built for my daughter, has her name on the inside. So we're going to show you in this video the tools I used and kind of jump into how I came up with this product. Stay tuned to find out more. Hello, if you're new to this channel, my name is Dan Shannon. I enjoy woodworking as a hobby and being out in the shop. On this channel, dive deep into my shop as we explore tools and tool reviews, as well as chatting about everything related to woodworking. If this grabs you by the tool belt, please subscribe to my channel if you want more videos like this. Welcome to Shop Talk with Dan the Man. If you're new here, welcome. If you're returning, thanks for coming back. Today's video, we're just going to jump into this. This is a jewelry box that I built for my daughter. It has her name on the inside. It has a little tiny tray for all her jewelry, and then on the inside it also has compartments down below. So this is an idea I thought up myself, and I'm just going to go through the process of how this finished product came in front of me here, and with the tools I used and kind of where I started to get that. So the first thing you want to do to get a project kind of on paper before you transfer it into an actual physical is notes. So on this paper I just kind of jotted down some measurements. Nothing too perfect, nothing too detailed, just something to get dimensions. So how deep did you want this jewelry box, the size of the lid, if you are going to have a compartment on the inside, is it going to have 2 trays, 1 tray? These jewelry boxes have different configurations. This is just something came out of my head. You can get really tall ones that have drawers that you pull out, very detailed, very high-end jewelry boxes, but for me and my daughter, she's young yet, so I didn't want anything too complicated, mainly because the effort and the skill, it depends on your comfort level. So if you're not very good at building things, you wouldn't want to go too crazy, but this is pretty simplistic in a lot of ways, but it looks really nice. It's got a nice trim here down below, and then of course the skirting around the base. I also used a router to carve out the top edging, and then of course I put her name on the inside, and the same with the drawer. The drawer I built a little box first, just out of plywood, nothing too special, and then on the top, just to make it look a little nicer, I put little pieces of trim with a walnut stain, just to give it that difference in coloring. As you can see, this is white oak, this entire project for the most part, and then of course this has the stain just to give it that different look. So we'll dive into the tools that I used to build this. So first thing you want to do is sit down and come up with a drawing. Maybe you can go online, look for some different sketches, or maybe even plans. A lot of things online have plans for them, or you can purchase the plans through the website. But this was just out of my head. So let's dive into that. Okay, so the first tool I used for my project is a planer. Now, you can see the wood that I had to work with is very rough. It is just rough cut from a mill. You can see there's lots of twisting, warping. It's very rough. Nothing sanded, it's got some splitting. So what I had to do is prep this wood so that I could use it for my project. So once I had the dimensions for my project, I picked out the boards I needed, the width of the board I needed, and of course you have to remember with your boards, if they're rough cut, and even if they're not, you might get them from the hardware store and they might have a slight warp to them on the edge. You want to get a true board, so that's a flat surface on both sides, and also your two side edges needed to be straight. So what I did first is I put it through the planer here, got my depth that I wanted for the height or the thickness of my stock, and then I could use this on my project. Another thing to note is make sure you have all of your boards the same thickness. And on this planer, I have a repeated cut on the side. I do have this tool review on my channel, so you can check that out. But there's a repeated cut, so you can just throw it through, wheel it down, and keep doing that until you get the thickness that you want. And then that board is all set for you. So we're going to jump into the next tool I used for this project. So the next tool I use for this project is the table saw. So each board, of course, you have your width that you need ripped. You need a true edge on all your boards. So whether that's the bottom box part, your base of your project, or the lid, they all have to have the exact width and depth for your box. So you're going to want to set up your table saw, your fence, and it's faster to do everything at once. So make sure you have all your boards you need planed, or in your case, if it's from a hardware store, it might already have everything all planed down, so you don't have to worry about the planing part. But then when you jump into the saw, make sure you have true edges all the way around your board, so that way when you have your project squared off as a square or rectangle in this case, you can have your project looking nice in the end. So that's what I did with the table saw. I also had these strips I had to do. So on the inside of the box, you notice here, I have these pieces that are underneath the lid to make a nice box frame, kind of separate the lid from the rest of the box. It also acts as a bit of a distance between the top drawer or the top box unit and the lid itself. So it's kind of a little extra, so if you have a bigger piece of jewelry in there, it won't actually keep the lid ajar. So that's another reason why I did that. But these strips themselves I had to rip on the table saw, and even these inside pieces for the box, all that was ripped on the table saw as well. So I could just feed that through quite easily and get the exact cut that I wanted. So I ripped everything first, got my length, or width rather, and then I ran it all through the table saw at once. So you can calculate roughly how many pieces you need for your project, and I encourage you to do that first before you move on to the next tool. That way the stock is all ripped the exact width that you need. And then in my shop, since it's so small, your shop might be a little different setup, but I have to move everything around. You can tell it's not that big. So the table saw, I have to fold it up, store it off to the side, and then jump onto the next tool. So it's very important in these types of projects, at least for me, and maybe for yourself, that you do as much as you can with the tool you have in front of you for the project, so you don't have to go back and set it up later on. We're going to jump into the next tool that I used for this project. So the third tool I needed to use was the sliding miter saw. If you don't have a sliding miter saw, you can use a chop saw, really whatever you have in your shop. A lot of these tools are interchangeable, and what I mean by that is if you don't have a chop saw or sliding miter, you can use a circular saw with a straight edge. There is some workaround. It's a little bit more of a pain at the end of the day. However, you can still get the same results. So on this project here, once I got everything cut to the width on the table saw, then I could come over to the sliding miter saw and get my length cut for my project. So all these boards needed exact length cut. So what I did was I started with my lid. So I got my lid cut to length. So you can just measure that. And if you have a long board, say if it's 10 feet or whatever, you could get quite a few lids if you're doing multiple jewelry boxes at once. And I would also encourage that as well if you're doing more than one of these for future or just for clients. If you have a small workshop, make sure you do all your cuts the same time for all the projects. It's way faster. You have everything already set up. I've learned that in the past. When you're building something, you're going to make multiple, do it at the same time. It's way faster. You have everything set up. And same for the length of the box. I had the width already cut at the table saw, and then I could just come over here and cut my lengths very easily. Some other features like the small little trim I have at the bottom here, I used a different tool for that. So we're going to jump into the next tool. But yeah, basically the chop saw or sliding miter saw will give you all of your length cuts that you need for your project, in this case the jewelry box. So let's jump into the next tool that I have that I used on this project. All right, next tool. So the next tool I used for this project is a trim router, and this one is cordless. If you have a plunge router or any type of router, sometimes they're corded, sometimes they're cordless, but in this case I have a cordless version, which is quite handy. Now before your box, in this case the jewelry box, is built, any type of detail that you want, whether it's on the lid, whether it's on the base, you want to make sure you do the routering before the project is put together. So in order to do that, you just take your lid, put it down on something grippy, and so just so it doesn't move around, because a lot of these routers have a lot of horsepower and they can move your stock around quite easy. So you just want to take it, put it on a mat. I have a grippy mat that I use, and then just do your perimeter around your lid. In this case, we'll just talk about this box because I'm not sure what you're building, but I did it around the lid, as you can see on the box, and then I also did it around the base of the box as well. So just to give it that nice decorative look. And there's multiple bits that you can own for doing these projects. I would encourage to take a scrap piece of wood. It doesn't have to be anything big, something small even, and just play around with the router bit. Don't put it on the finished product right away. Just kind of get your depth, get the overall look that you're kind of generically going for, and then once you like what you see, then apply that to the finished product. And it's also good to note with hardwood, this is red oak, it will burn the edges slightly, which requires a lot of sanding after the fact. You can see here there's a couple spots I didn't quite get, they were quite burnt, you know, and that's different reasons. It could be the speed of the bit. I haven't really come up with a scenario where I don't burn the wood, so if you think of anything you know, that can contribute to not burning the wood from here on out, leave the comment below, and you know, so I can apply that to myself and others as well. But as you can see on the base, it turned out really nice, having that decorative bead on the back and around the perimeter. So that's how I did the decorative trim around the edges, is with the router. So we're going to jump on to the next tool I used to kind of complete this. So the next tool I used to build this jewelry box was some clamps. So in this case, I have these Irwin quick grips. I do have a review on all the tools I'm using today on my channel, so if you want to check out those tools, you can. These are the Irwin quick grips, and I just use them to you know, clamp the box as I was building it. Now ideally I wouldn't mind some pipe clamps or corner clamps, so when you're doing picture frames, boxes, you know, those types of things, you can square them up really nice because the clamp is actually an L shape in the corners, which holds it true to the 90. There was a little bit of frustration when I built this, just to keep it true the whole time. I had to kind of move it around, and yeah, it wasn't ideal, but for the average person, it's not ideal to use these clamps. There's better methods to clamp a box structure, but a lot of times you just gotta use what you have in your shop. There's been many times where I didn't have the proper tool, and you just kind of have to figure it out as you go and kind of improvise. Doesn't mean your product at the end of the day is going to be bad. It just means there might be a little bit more frustration to go along with it, or you might have to use some fill-in putty or some sort of a epoxy or something just to fill in those gaps because it's not quite true 90 degree. So you know, there's ways around it, and I was always told the difference between a decent carpenter and a professional is how they cover up their mistakes. So no different than these smaller jewelry boxes or bigger units, depending on what you're doing, of course. But there is a way to, you know, seal in those little tiny cracks and kind of, you know, fade those out of your project to make it more professional. So that's a little tip when it comes to doing any project that you're doing. Just, you know, just kind of improvise with what you have and what you have in your shop. So let's jump into the next tool that I used. So the next tool I used for this jewelry box, once I had everything clamped together with the clamps, everything kind of squared up, I wanted to cut all my strips for the box. So I was able to use my bandsaw to cut these little strips. I have a fence on here. I had this sliding gauge, so I was able to rip all my little tiny pieces on this bandsaw. And then of course for the base, I had these cutouts, really nice cutouts, and I wanted to use the bandsaw to kind of get my edging. So that's what I did on this bandsaw. I was able to cut all these little roundouts on the bandsaw. Perfect tool for that. If you had smaller intricate work, you could use this. This is a scroll saw, and this is more for intricate, smaller, like if you're cutting a little tiny plywood or something, cut words out, letters, etc. That would be for this blade. But if you're cutting bigger stock, you definitely want to use the bandsaw. So I had the bandsaw, so I was able to cut these strips out and make them kind of as thin as I wanted, and be able to get my nice 45 cuts. You could use the sliding miter, but you'd have to make sure you have one of those tables installed that has a full back on it and just the blade width for cutting, because cutting something this small would actually probably snap off and is actually quite dangerous because the RPM on the bigger blades is ridiculous. So I would definitely recommend, if you have one, using the bandsaw. If you don't, there is other ways around it. Like I said, with the miter saw, you can get a table built where when you bring the blade down, it will only cut through the width of the blade in the wood, so you can slide your product you know, closer to the blade without having that kickback from not having a back on it. So, you know, but you improvise. I've done that a lot with this project. Different tools you might not have, or different things you might want to do on your project. It's great to kind of improvise as you go. And same with the drawer here. I was able to cut all that out with the bandsaw as well. So these top pieces, I was able to cut to length and also cut to the width. Same with the plywood. I was able to cut that as well, and the base on this bandsaw. I did use the table saw to rip these pieces to get them true, but you know, I was able to cut that plywood on the table saw, and then slide over to here to do more of the intricate cutting. And then on the bottom inside, there's a little compartment as well that I made so she can put more jewelry in the bottom, and all those pieces were cut on the bandsaw as well. Little blocks. It's great because you can move your fingers quite close to the blade without worrying too much. so you could slide them along. This also has a push stick for your fingers, so if you get too close to the blade, you don't have to worry with that. But yeah, this was a great tool. I haven't really used it a whole lot in the shop, so what a great time for me to really dive into the bandsaw and check out its capabilities by building this. So that was one saw that I needed to complete some of the smaller details on this project for sure. All right, we're going to jump into how I sanded this and smoothed it all up and kind of completed the job. So let's jump over to the sander. So in this project, I used 2 different sanders to get this project the finish that I wanted. A lot of this wood, even if it's really nice from the store, it still needs a sand before you can apply your clear coat. So with this sanding table, you're able to change the degree. I have a review on the sanding table on my channel. It's a rigid product, and it also doubles as a Dremel spindle type of unit. So you can remove this belt, it slides off, and then you put your spindles on this unit. And you have different sizes, of course, depending on what you're sanding for your particular needs. So I really like this, and for the base, I was able to sand my arches on this project quite easily. I just put the right size spindle on the tool, and then I was able to take each individual piece and run it to get that nice sanded arch. So you can kind of play around with that. You don't have to have a set design. You can kind of form it as you go and just kind of be creative. Maybe if you want one bigger than the other, or maybe a small one in the middle, just kind of have fun with it, play around with it. That's kind of what I did. I didn't have a set design that I was going for. I just kind of visually, whatever kind of looked nice. And if you're doing 2 of the same, so this side and then the back side, I'd recommend you can tape both boards together using some painter's tape on the ends on both sides. That way, while you're sanding, it does the same sand line on both, kind of transfers to both pieces. And the same with the 2 ends. I just taped those together, and I was able to sand out the same middle spot on both ends. So it just kind of keeps it more uniform. Yeah, it's handmade, so it's not going to be perfect. This is not perfect. I can point out a lot of flaws on it, but I'm also the one that built it. And no doubt, when you build something, you'll know all the little cracks or flaws in your products as well when you build it. But yeah, I think all in all, whatever this sander didn't take care of, I had an orbital sander, Rigid makes as well, cordless, and I was able to, give this a once over before I put it together. And that's another thing that's important. Make sure all the surfaces are sanded nicely before you glue it up. Glue left over, you can just kind of sand up in the end. But there's definitely places you can't get once it's built. So I recommend before it's put together, take a palm sander, orbital sander, whatever you have to work with, corded, uncorded, doesn't really matter. Just get your project all sanded up, so then when you put it together, it looks great. It looks very smooth, and your clear coat as well, when it goes on, it's very smooth at the end of the day. It's not rough. You can't feel anything. And yeah, so the sander, that's kind of what you need to do to bring your project to the next level, to make it more finished. All right, let's jump into the final thoughts and kind of the overall experience I had building this project. Okay, so the final thoughts that I had on building this project from start to finish. For one, it was nice to have it all come together. There was some frustration along the way, like I said, with the clamping. I didn't have the perfect clamps to do boxes, so that was frustrating. But I made do, just like in your shop. If you don't have the proper tool, you just make do with what you have. And that's the most important. You get out there, start a project, Another thing that was cool was this is directly from me. I custom made it. The dimensions I just figured out on my own. There wasn't really anything that I used to go up against. Now maybe there might be some ideas on a project, or maybe your wife says, hey, can you build this one that I seen online? So you kind of have to go with that, you know, depending on the project. But in my case, for my daughter, and I just pulled some ideas out of my head for what I wanted. The name in the inside I thought was pretty cool. I have her name there as she opens the lid. She did ask me why I didn't put it on the outside for her. And I said, well, as you get older, this is more timeless if I have it on the inside, because the outside still looks like a jewelry box. And then when you open it up, you know that it's customized to her herself. So also with the drawers, when it comes to the drawers, that was a little bit hard to glue together, because there's multiple little pockets in here that you have to glue. So you got to do your outside edge, slide the different compartments in, clamp that up. So there's multiple clamps on this one drawer. There was a lot of gluing, a lot of time sensitive, that you had to put it all together really quick. So that was frustrating. Glue setting up, you're trying to clamp it, you got it smearing out a little bit, you got to use a rag. So yeah, that was a little frustrating with this project, to do it in a quick manner. And then of course the top was fairly easy. Once everything was set up on the drawer, I could just do the top as aesthetic. It doesn't do anything else. It just kind of looks nice. So that was another thing that I did after the fact. And then of course the inside, having the bottom compartment, she likes to have that. She calls it her hidden, you know, kind of hidden area for valuables, whether it's money or whatever. So she loves the fact that it's, you know, it's not really exposed. You would just assume this is all that's in there. And she really likes the fact that I built a little compartment down below. And I kind of did that for bigger jewelry, you know, watches, different things maybe she'll get later on. Whereas like earrings and smaller stuff I had for the top. So that was kind of my overall thoughts on building this. You know, in the end, it turned out really nice, you know, I think. And the bottom, kind of the decorative piece, well, that was kind of an afterthought. I thought of a chest that you'd have blankets in, and they have like a nice little skirting on the bottom. So I was like, oh, maybe that will look cool on a jewelry box. So there's a little bit of playing around with this one as far as the details go. I started off just with a simple box, and then I just kind of morphed into some other options. And I really like the dark wood, kind of accents the red oak. And what I put on the top was a fast drying clear coat, so I could do multiple layers within a short period of time, because I did have a timeline on this box for the birthday. So I did need to put the clear coats on. I think there's 4 clear coats on this box. As you can see, it has a nice shine to it, and that was just to make it last a long time, due to in and out the box. And you know, my daughter, she's younger still. She's only 9, so that also would be factored into maybe how many coats you'd like on your jewelry box. So that's pretty much it for thoughts on this jewelry box. Hopefully you liked this video, and why not get out in your shop and try to build something like this yourself. It doesn't have to be exactly like this. It can be something else, but the goal is just to get out there and to make something. It could be something as simple as a cutting board, or a wooden spoon for your kitchen. You know, start off small. It doesn't have to be anything. You might consider this a big project or beyond your skill set, but just get out in your shop and try it. What's the worst case scenario? You know, you get to tackle something and it doesn't work out, and you got something to burn out in your fire pit later on. I mean, it's it's not that big of a deal, you know, to try something new. You never know the results that you might come up with at the end of the day. So just get out there and enjoy it. And like I said before, doesn't matter how big or how small your shop is, or what you use for tools. You can see I have Rigid behind me. A lot of my products are Rigid, and that's mainly because of their warranty. I really like the Rigid LSA warranty. So that's pretty much it for me today. Please like, and if you're not already, click on that subscribe button down there to be part of the Shop Talk family. Love to have you on board. I'm going to be doing some future projects. I got one lined up for this fall, kitchen reno that I'm doing. So stay tuned for that, and I will catch you later. Have a great day.